Dr. Wagner. Your lecture on Frederick the Great and Sanssouci was so inspiring. I didn't know a king could have such a mix of warlike ambition and intellectual depth. Could we talk more about him and Sanssouci?
Of course, Daniel. Frederick the Great is one of the most fascinating figures in German history. He was a man of contradictions, a brilliant military strategist, but also a philosopher at heart. Sanssouci, his retreat near Potsdam, reflects this duality. What intrigued you most about it?
I loved the idea of Sanssouci as a place where he could escape from politics and war. It seems so peaceful and thoughtful. But why did he build it in such a modest style, instead of something grand like Versailles?
Excellent question. Frederick wanted Sanssouci to be a personal refuge, not a statement of royal power. The name itself means without worries. The palace was designed as a single-story pavilion nestled into the landscape with terraces for vineyards. It's not ostentatious like Versailles, but it's elegant and harmonious, a reflection of Frederick's love for philosophy, art, and nature.
That's so unique. And the gardens? They seem just as important as the palace itself. What was Frederick's vision for them?
Frederick viewed the gardens as an extension of the palace, blending art and nature. They were meticulously designed with terraces, fountains, and statues, creating spaces for quiet reflection. He even incorporated the exotic, like the Chinese house, which merges Rococo style with elements inspired by the Far East. It was Frederick's way of showcasing his cultural curiosity.
I love how he surrounded himself with intellectuals and created this atmosphere of enlightenment. Was Voltaire really his guest at Sanssouci?
Yes, Voltaire stayed at Sanssouci for nearly 3 years. He and Frederick had a fascinating relationship. Both admired each other, but they also clashed. Frederick was deeply influenced by Enlightenment ideas, which is evident in his writings and policies, but Voltaire found it hard to reconcile Frederick's intellectual pursuits with his militarism.
That must have been a difficult contradiction. Frederick's military campaigns, like the 7 Years' War, seem so at odds with his love for philosophy. How did he justify it?
Frederick believed that as king, he had a duty to strengthen and expand Prussia. He once said, "A prince is only the first servant of the state." His wars, especially the conquest of Silesia, were pragmatic. He wanted to secure Prussia's power and ensure its survival. But he also saw himself as a philosopher king, balancing his responsibilities with his intellectual pursuits.
That makes sense. And after the wars, why did he build the new palace? Wasn't Sanssouci enough?
The new palace was Frederick's way of celebrating Prussia's survival and triumph after the 7 Years' War. It's much grander than Sanssouci and was meant to display his resilience and the state's strength. While Sanssouci was personal and intimate, the new palace was public and monumental.
So fascinating. But Frederick seemed so lonely in his later years. Did he ever find peace?
In a way, Sanssouci was his peace. As he aged, he spent more time there, writing, reading, and reflecting. He still invited thinkers to visit, though he was known for being gruff and difficult. His letters to Voltaire in his later years show a mix of wit and melancholy. He referred to himself as the old Fritz.
That's bittersweet. And Sanssouci, how has it changed since Frederick's time?
After Frederick's death, his successors added to the park and modified some parts of the palace. But the essence of Sanssouci, with its gardens, architecture, and intellectual spirit, remains intact. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a symbol of Enlightenment ideals.
I'd love to visit and see it all. The gardens, the Chinese house, even the vineyards. Is there anything you'd recommend I focus on?
Definitely take your time exploring the gardens. They're stunning in every season. Visit the marble hall inside Sanssouci, where Frederick hosted his famous banquets, and don't miss the grave where he's buried alongside his beloved dogs. It's a humble resting place for such a remarkable figure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wagner. This conversation has made me even more excited to visit. Frederick and Sanssouci feel so alive through your stories.
Smiling warmly. You're very welcome, Daniel. Sanssouci is truly a special place, and I'm sure you'll feel its history and charm when you visit. Let me know if you need more tips for your trip.